to another episode of Asexualized, My Asexual Life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you don't know who I am Sandra Bellamy, author of Asexual Perspectives, founder of asexualise.com and founder of Asexualise Academy. Don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, hit the great big subscribe button down below, hit that bell icon to get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it and loving the content as we go along. So in today's video I want to talk to you about, can someone who's asexual become demisexual? So this is something that's not really talked about. You're either asexual or demisexual, but can someone become demisexual who's asexual? So asexual is someone who lacks sexual attraction, and they usually have basically the full definition of asexuality is the person lacks sexual attraction and or has little to no interest in sexual activities. So there are some asexuals that lack sexual attraction but still partake in sexual activities, you know, such as they might touch the body, you know, sexual parts of the body. And whilst that could also be seen to be sensual as well, to sexuals that could be considered a sexual act, you know, if you're touching the genital area, for example, and stuff like that. So you can get some asexuals that are sex repulsed. They don't want anything to do with sex, but they still might like, you know, doing sexual acts like kissing certain, you know, like I said, the anatomy, genital areas. They might like touching all over the body, which can be seen as sensual, but when it involves sexual organs, if you like, then it's really kind of a sexual act. Masturbation to each other rather than just yourself can be considered a sexual act. So there are, you know, asexual like that, and the asexuals that are sex repulsed, that don't want anything to do with any sexual acts whatsoever. They're not interested in any sex whatsoever. Some of those might be aromantic asexuals, so ones that lack romantic attraction and sexual attraction. And some of those might be romantic, so they might, you know, feel romantic attraction, but not sexual attraction. And then there's a lot of different areas in between, such as grey romantic, demi-romantic, and there's different types of romantics, you know, homo-romantic, bi-romantic, pan-romantic, heteromantic like I am. So there's lots of different types and variations, but as a general rule, we all lack sexual attraction. There are a few asexuals that come under the and or little to no interest, as in no interest in sexual activities whatsoever. They're just not bothered about it. So, you know, so that it might be questionable whether they experience sexual attraction, but they don't experience enough to want to act on it. So usually they fall under the grey asexual spectrum. So they might experience sexual attraction, but it's, you know, it's really not enough to want to act on it. They're not that bothered about having sex. They're like, oh, I experience a bit of sexual attraction, but, you know, it's really no big deal for me. And you also get the other grey asexuals that have got grey areas that are more sexual. So there's so many different variations as well. You know, there's so many different categories of and subcategories of asexuality that I'm not going to get into the whole lot of them in this video. I just couldn't, even if I wanted to. You know, there's new terms popping up quite a lot of the time. But as a general rule, we don't experience sexual attraction. And the demisexuals, which actually fall under the grey asexual spectrum, the demisexuals are the ones that experience sexual attraction only when a deep emotional bond has been formed. And it usually has to be reciprocated by the other person and maintained by both parties in order for the relationship to still be a sexual attraction based or have sexual attraction involved in the relationship. So with a demisexual, you know, like I said, they don't experience sexual attraction unless a strong emotional bond has been formed. Now, there's different types of demisexuals. There's the ones that literally they come across one person in their life, or maybe, you know, even more than you know, there might be 2 or 3 others, you know, they come across in their life and they only experience sexual attraction for either that one person or a few people. Like, you could count them on less than your hand. Do you know what I mean? There's someone in my book who's demisexual and he's with a partner. He said he only felt it when you know, he met this person. So there's also other demisexuals that can experience sexual attraction a lot more frequently when they form a strong emotional bond. So some asexuals, they have that type of personality where they do bond very quickly with people, or they build up an instant rapport and they build an emotional connection with that person. And so by doing that, they then feel sexual attraction a lot more often, a lot more frequently. I would say those type of people are more on the sexual end of the demisexual spectrum. You see, this is where it gets really complicated, because within all the different subcategories of asexuality, you always get the variations. So, could someone who's asexual become demisexual? I don't really like the term become, but yes, they could end up being demisexual, because they could be an asexual person who's never experienced a sexual attraction in their life. But for some reason, this one person comes into their life and they do experience sexual attraction. I doesn't mean to say all asexuals do this. It doesn't mean to say loads of asexuals do this. I don't know that many asexuals that do this, to be quite honest with you. But there is, like I said, there's a demisexual in my Asexual Perspectives book, and I do manage the grey and demi asexual dating group on Facebook. Oh, and I know a person in my group that gets emotionally attached very quickly to people. Therefore, he experiences sexual attraction a lot more frequently than some of the others in the group that don't really experience it that often with people. You know, that they struggle because, you know, there's one guy and he is a very sexual demisexual, and he loves lots of sex, but he cannot just have it with anyone. And unless he forms that strong emotional connection with someone, because I think he's on lots of asexual dating sites, as well as I think he's probably on sexual sites. You know, unless he forms that strong emotional bond, it won't make him want to have it just with that specific one particular person. If you know what I mean? It's like he's a highly sexual being, really wants to have sex, but he can't bring himself to have it with anyone because he hasn't found the one person that he really connects with on that deep, intimate level, if you understand what I mean. So it can be quite difficult. But yeah, some asexuals, there might be a few people that realise after a while that they might meet this one person, or a few people in their life occasionally, that they do experience sexual attraction for. And I think it's very difficult for that person, because, you know, if they've thought they were asexual, didn't experience sexual attraction for the whole of their life, and then all of a sudden experienced it, I think that can be quite difficult. It can be a bit difficult psychologically for them. It can be like a revelation that, wow, I found out this is what it feels like to experience sexual attraction. I didn't know it before. It's a feeling I've never experienced before. And in some ways it might make them feel good that maybe they're a little, you know, maybe they're a bit more normal, as in terms of heteronormative society, as in terms of, you know, sexual. But it might make them feel very left out and lonely, that there's, there's less people willing to say in the asexual community that are demisexual, for the fear of being ostracized, as obviously they're not a pure asexual, as in the sense they do then experience sexual attraction. Because once they experience that sexual attraction, they're kind of like a bit stuck, because they're not asexual anymore, in the sense they don't experience sexual attraction, and they do usually want to have sexual activity. So really they're not asexual anymore, but they still fall under the asexual spectrum, in the sense that they don't, if they stopped being with that person, they would go back to being asexual, not experiencing any sexual attraction, unless another person happened to come along and have the same emotional bond with them. And like I said, it could be just 2 or 3 people you've got that within your life if you're demisexual. So I think it's really hard, and that's what I wanted to just bring up in this video, really, is that, you know, there might be a few people who find out they're demisexual and they might feel a bit upset or in pain about it. And I do understand, because it's kind of like you're in no man's land. You're not really fully you are fully sexual with that one person, but the rest of the time you're not. And then you don't really fit in the you're not really asexual anymore, and you kind of don't fit on the spectrum, in the sense that you're not, you know, you do experience sexual attraction, do want to engage in sexual activity, so you don't fit the criteria anymore, the definition of asexuality as is. But you still kind of fall on the asexual spectrum, because there's nowhere else for you to be, if you know what I mean, because you know, otherwise you wouldn't experience it. So it's kind of really hard. And What's very, very interesting is when I went up to the UK Asexuality conference on the train in London, I was the speaker there last year, I met this woman who was a lesbian. She was actually an LGBT activist and was doing some work. I think she's doing some work for the government or something like that. It was quite high up. She was doing like some voluntary work, and I think it was associated to some government body or something. Anyway, it was very interesting talking to her. We did connect on Facebook, but she says, oh, what is demisexuality? You know, she was trying to understand it more. She was asking me questions because she said, I'm only just learning about it. Because obviously asexuality is in the acronym of LGBT plus QIA. So theoretically, we're part of the LGBT community. So I don't actively participate in that community because I'm heteromantic and, you know, I'm not geared towards sexual activity or have sex in my mind. Like, obviously LGBT people are still sexual. But I do appreciate, you know, I've got lesbian friends, I've got gay friends, so it's all good. However, you know, when I was talking to her, she said that she didn't know, you know, she was getting to learn about asexuality. And she was asking me questions and stuff on the train and, you know, in front of people. I'm not bothered about that, as you know, because I'm outspoken. But she was saying I'm demisexual. So she didn't class demisexual as being part of the asexual spectrum. She classed that as being LGBT. And I said, you do realise that demisexual is on the asexual spectrum? And she kind of didn't really say anything to that. She obviously didn't know, because she doesn't consider herself demisexual, because she can, you know, she said she's a lesbian and she was doing LGBT work and she was just learning about asexuality. And so it's kind of really weird. It's like, how many people in LGBT actually say they're demisexual and don't believe demisexual's part of the asexual spectrum? They think it's part of LGBT. This is very, very interesting, isn't it? You know, it's like, is there a crossover? Is there a proportion of LGBT people who identify as demisexual and a proportion of asexuals who obviously identify as LGBT, who obviously identify as demisexual, but they don't, you know, they're not LGBT as such. They're in the community because of the acronym of asexuality rather than being demisexual in and of itself. So is there, like, obviously there is a proportion of asexuals that call themselves demisexual that are demisexual, but how many in LGBT are like that? Because it's kind of like, well, which one do they go in, if you know what I mean? It's kind of like they're in both. So I thought that was a real eye-opening experience. It's like, oh, okay. So I think that must be very difficult if you're demisexual, knowing which one you belong to. If you want a sense of place. You know, you don't really need to worry about that if you're not bothered about where you belong, because obviously you belong in this world anyway. But if you want a sense of identity and place, it might be kind of like, well, which one do you go to? So I think that's very confusing for demisexuals. But this video is, you know, really meant to be about as well, particularly those people who, you know, might be feeling a bit unsure about their asexuality because they might have had someone come into their life, and I haven't, you know, I haven't experienced sexual attraction, but I know how it feels because I've been in heterosexual relationships half my life, and I can feel that when I get very, very aroused, which I would say is the closest thing to sexual attraction without actually being sexually attracted. I know that I had to do a survey, and that's what your orientation, they asexual on the survey, it was a hospital survey, which is awesome. Oh wow, Heather, they had asexual on a hospital survey. That's incredible. Sorry, I have to clap that. That's amazing. Woo! That's incredible. Is that in the USA? Do you live in the USA? That's just amazing. That's really, really incredible. Well done. That's great. Yeah. I just think it's very difficult for people if they are Canada. That's really good, Heather. I'm so pleased. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. It's nice to see you here. That's really good. I hope we get more of that. Do you know what I mean? In the UK, we haven't got it on employment forms yet. We haven't got it on job applications. It's really weird. They do our job application forms, which they don't put it on, but they have an equal opportunities policy that you have to fill in to go with it for equal opportunities monitoring. I mean, you don't have to, I think you can leave some of it. I don't know how compulsory it is, but basically if you fill it in, you have to send it off together. So it's supposed to be anonymous, but of course they know who you are because you're sending it off with the application form. So you're not really anonymous data, are you? Because it's got all your gender and everything, on there, and you've got your application forms. They can, they go in together in the same envelope, or if you're sending them online, they go together anyway. So of course they're not anonymous. Do you know what I mean? You don't put your name and stuff on them, but all they have to do is staple them together or write on them which CV came with it, and they know who you are, don't they? In the UK, when I apply for jobs, they have on the application form about, orientation, but they don't have asexuality. So if they say other, then I just put other. Or sometimes they put prefer not to say, so I just put prefer not to say because I think there isn't an option for me on there. So if there isn't an option, then I'll just put prefer not to say because I'd rather not say heterosexual or any of the others when I'm not. Do you know what I mean? So, but I just think it's very, it must be very difficult for people who are asexual then all of a sudden experience that one sort of rare occurrence of sexual attraction. And I just want them to know that, they're not alone. There's other people like them. And, if you do experience that, it's okay. I mean, I've never experienced sexual attraction, but I do strongly know what it feels like, which is a really weird thing to say. And like I said, I think it's because I've got the high arousal levels, and I do, if I look at a guy, I can feel aroused, but it doesn't, like if there's a really beautiful foreign looking guy, like I can feel aroused, but I don't experience any sexual attraction. I never look at him and think I want sex with him. If I am aroused, it's because I want to kiss him. I want to kiss his face and stroke his hair and cuddle him. Do you see the difference? But obviously, there might be some asexuals that do, on the one-off experience that sexual attraction. They might feel it might really confuse the heck out of them, and they might think, what's going on with me? And if you do feel that, I understand, and it's okay. It's okay if you do change in that way. I think it's really difficult because it's like I say throughout these videos, like I've said, I've known I'm asexual since 2014. I've been doing videos now since October 2015 on this channel, and I haven't experienced sexual attraction. But if I did, then it would freak me out because I'd be like, well, what happens now? But I haven't experienced it. But I didn't even know that I had arousal levels high arousal levels until I discovered asexuality. Because I just thought prior to 2014 that I was heterosexual, who didn't really like sex, wasn't really into it, more about love and romance, and that just I didn't experience it. I thought my body, when it was reacting that way, I guess I just thought it was sexual attraction, but I didn't realise that arousal and sexual attraction were two separate things. And so I think, when you're, especially in the beginning, when you're finding out about asexuality, I think it can be really confusing because, you could be the type of person that doesn't really experience sexual attraction, and you don't really go around thinking about you want sex with people, but they might be that one time, that one-off incident that you do experience it. And I think that can throw you into turmoil. It's like, where do I belong? Am I sexual? Am I asexual? What's going on with me? And it made me feel weird when I realised that I have higher arousal levels. I'm like, what's going on? I didn't even know that. When I was with my ex, I didn't notice it. I think obviously because I was in a heterosexual relationship, and it's kind of normal for bodies to respond that way when you're sexually attracted to someone. So I kind of thought I was, but I wasn't, because I never ever looked at him and thought, I want sex with you. I've never done that with anyone. And I would much just have preferred the kissing, and never have sex in my life. So it's kind of like really difficult, I think, because I'm trying to explain how hard it was me realising how aroused I got, because that made me feel weird. It's like, I've never noticed my body doing that before. I've never consciously, I mean, obviously it did it, but it did it subconsciously. So obviously in your brain, you have a conscious and a subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the thing that lets you do things like, walk and sleep, and, it does all the bodily functions. And, when you're walking on a pavement, you carry on going up the pavement and stuff like that. And, You know, you might clean your teeth with one particular hand, and, you know, it's just like instinctive functions that you just do habitually. But, you know, the actual conscious mind, that's the subconscious, and the conscious mind is what tells you what to do and what you are. So, you know, if you're subconscious, I wasn't aware of my arousal levels. It was like a subconscious thing. It's like I was just doing that without realizing, because I thought it was sexual attraction. I didn't separate it. Then when I discovered asexuality, and I discovered I didn't get, first of all, I didn't understand in the asexual sphere. I watched videos myself to learn about asexuality. I didn't understand what the difference was between arousal, attraction, and desire. I thought, well, what? They're all the same, aren't they? I didn't really get it, and it took me a while to understand it. When I started realizing that I experienced arousal but no sexual attraction, then I understood more. And when I started, you know, the sexual desire and sexual attraction, I didn't get that for ages. You know, because to me they're the same thing. I can't experience, well, I don't experience, but I couldn't anyway experience sexual attraction. I couldn't experience sexual desire without the sexual attraction. You know, there's no way I'd want to have sex with someone for the sake of it, even if I was heterosexual, because I'm not that type of person. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't just have it for the sake of it. I'd have to have a connection with them. I have to get to know them. I can't just jump into bed with someone. I've never had a one night stand in my life. You know, I have kissed a guy and had a date with someone for just one night though, but I have never had sex. And so, you know, all my sexual stuff, like in the past, like all my times I've had sex has been with partners. You know, I've never done that outside of a relationship. And so I think it's, you know, it's very difficult when your body, you find, does things that you're like, what the heck's this? I wasn't consciously aware of it, because it was my subconscious mind that used to do body stuff. When obviously when you're in a relationship, heterosexual, asexual, you know, if your body's hormones are working, if your body's just, you know, doing its normal functions as in a sexual way, you know, arousal's kind of like, not all asexuals experience arousal, I just have to say that, but for some asexuals, you know, the arousal is just normal. So if you're in a relationship with a heterosexual, for example, or any type of sexual, your body can still do all this arousal stuff. It can still react to the person touching you. It can still react to, you know, having intercourse. It can still do all those things even though you don't actually want the sex. That's how some asexuals can experience no sexual attraction, but they can still experience arousal and body responses. Do you see what I mean? So when I was in a relationship with a heterosexual, I've been in more than one, I didn't think of the arousal as separate to sexual attraction. It was only when I started learning about asexuality and the difference that it suddenly clicked that for years I've been having arousal but no sexual attraction. So at first I thought I might be an actual textbook grey A, that I experienced sexual attraction but not enough to want to act on it. That's how I was going along the lines of I was a heteromantic for definite, but I wasn't sure if I was a grey A as in the proper definition of a grey A, the textbook definition, which is, you know, experience sexual attraction but not enough to want to act on it. And that's what I thought I may be. But then I realised, looking back, that I've never ever in my entire life looked at a guy and wanted sex. So therefore I've never experienced sexual attraction. I've never had that urge to have sex with a person. It's just been, I've enjoyed the arousal experience. Like certain parts of my body, if they're touched, I've enjoyed that in the past, other parts I haven't. And, you know, and kissing makes me like that. And it's the feeling of my private parts being tingly and excitable and aroused that made me feel good, not the fact of sex stuff, which I know that I wouldn't want to do. I'd rather have done the washing up. Do you see what I mean? So that's how come it can be very confusing. And there may be some asexuals that do then actually, you know, experience sexual attraction. They might come to an asexual forum just discovering about asexuality. They may look at all the different terms and they may think, you know, they may think they're not normal, as in the sense of heteronormative, as in the sense that they don't go around looking at people and thinking, oh, I want sex with them. So they know they don't fit in there, and then they come looking for answers in asexual forums and stuff. And then all of a sudden they realise through learning about the different terms that they do experience sexual attraction sometimes. And so then they realise that they're actually demisexual, not full asexual. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you. And so I think that can be very, very scary for people, you know, if they find out that they do experience that sexual attraction, but just quite rarely. And so I just wanted this video really to reach out to the people who, you know, maybe aren't too sure about their asexuality. I think it's best in the beginning, rather than just jumping in and saying I'm this type of asexual, until you know for definite. You know, just say I think I'm this, rather than saying I'm definitely this, and make sure you read up about it and get the different explanations. You know, as someone, for example, who experiences sexual desire, that I have known a few asexuals to say they experience sexual desire yet no sexual attraction, and because of the way I personally am, I couldn't be. I pretty much know for definite. Yes, Michael, I know. Bless your heart. So, you know, when I was learning about asexual, I didn't get, there was a few people, well, 2 people I came across that say I experience sexual desire, but I don't experience sexual attraction. I didn't really get it, but they desire the sex itself, but yet they don't feel any sexual attraction. They don't actually, that sexual desire is not connected to anyone whatsoever. They just want the sex. And that was weird for me, learning that a couple of asexuals felt that way. I'm like, how can you want sex when you don't experience any sexual attraction and you're asexual? It just didn't make sense to me. But I get that sexual desire can be separate to the sexual attraction. Just in the heteronormative world, they go hand in hand. Usually, you can't usually have, you can have sexual desire without the sexual attraction, but you can't usually have the sexual attraction without the sexual desire. So, for example, heterosexuals, they can go to a nightclub, for example, and say, I want to get laid tonight, meaning I want to have sex tonight with somebody, it doesn't matter who with. And so, therefore, they're experiencing that sexual desire rather than the sexual attraction. But usually, they wouldn't, you know, they'd have, you know, if they experience sexual attraction, that could then lead to sexual desire, if you get my meaning. And so it becomes a very complicated thing. And when I heard some asexuals experience a sexual desire, the desire to have sex but no sexual attraction, that to me is bizarre, you know, because I find, because I'm personally couldn't have one without the other, even though I know I'm asexual and don't experience sexual attraction, I couldn't have one without the other, because I've always been of the mindset that I can just, you know, do sexual stuff. In the past, I couldn't have sex with someone outside of a relationship. So because I wouldn't desire sex with someone I found ugly, because I wouldn't be desiring the sex itself. Do you know what I mean? I don't like sex. I'm not interested in it. And so that I found very bizarre. But I think it's quite scary, like I said, for people who are just finding out about asexuality. I think you really need to make sure you do lots of research before you jump in to what type of asexual you really are. You know, I think it's good to, like, you know, if you think you are something, to put down, you know, I think I'm this, I'm still learning. I think that's being open and honest. What I think is being very not good is when there's some people that come into the asexual community and they're learning about it, instead of learning about it and then making a formed decision. I think it took me about 3 weeks to fully decide all about my asexuality when I was reading up about it, you know. I just don't think it's good for these people to come in and go, oh yeah, I'm asexual, without really looking at it. Do you know what I mean? Because some people, you know, they say, oh, I'm asexual at the moment. Asexuality is not a phase. It's not a fad. It's not something that you can turn on and turn off. It's not something that, oh, I haven't had sex for 6 months, so I'm asexual. It's not like that. Asexuality is a sexual orientation that's a lack of sexual attraction. And like I said at the beginning of this video, and or little to no interest in sexual activities. So it's not something you can just fit on like a hat and put, oh, I'm going to wear this hat today. Yeah, I'm not having sex. So I did a podcast interview recently. It's going to be coming out soon. And I'll let you know, I'll link it. And obviously I'll do a video about when it's out. And I was speaking to this person who'd never heard of asexuality before. and they did some research over the weekend, but they didn't understand it in their they've only researched it over the weekend. They thought asexuality was basically when someone doesn't have sex for, they're in a relationship, for example, and they don't have sex for she was saying, some people don't have sex for years. Because it's true, someone can be in a heterosexual relationship, for example, and still not have sex for years. It doesn't make them asexual. It doesn't change their sexual orientation. They've just decided not to have it for whatever reason. They've become bored of it, or disinterested, or life's just taken over and they're never in the mood. Or someone might not have it for a few months, maybe because they're single, or maybe because it's just not the right time for them, or maybe, you know what I'm saying? So that doesn't change their sexual orientation just because they don't want it for a period of time. And I think that's a danger. I think people come across asexuality, and for some people, they think, oh, because I've just not having sex for a few months, or a year or whatever in their relationship, or 4 months or whatever, they just think, oh, I'm asexual then, and I'm just being asexual, and that's not. And I just wish more people would research it for their own benefit as well as that. And I think there's a danger in some of the media when people are doing interviews. I think there's a few people that are saying, well, if asexuality you think you are, if the hat fits, then just wear it. And it sounds like it's something that you can just put on like a pullover, and try on. And if you don't like it, it's okay. You can take it off again. And, there's two ways. I've not had it for 33 years. I'm 33 years old. Oh, bless you, Michael. Oh, it's good you're a virgin. I think more people should be virgins, personally. I'm not a virgin, but yeah, it'd be good if you keep your virginity for yourself. I've always said that. I was emotionally blackmailed into losing my virginity. And if I hadn't if I'd have found out I was asexual years ago, I wouldn't have needed to bother having sex, because I'd know that I could get love without it. Do you know what I mean? But back then I didn't know that. I thought love and sex had to go together. And I think that's a very, very damaging thing. I think the whole of society is very damaging like that. Very damaging. Even today, there's no education in schools about asexuality. Do you know what I mean? It's just like everyone associates sex with love. Everyone not everyone, obviously asexuals don't, but the majority of the population do. I think it's very, very damaging. It's very, very hurtful. And I think, growing up, if you are different and that you don't quite fit in, it's kind of like you feel a bit like an alien. And it's like no one understands you. And it's like everyone's talking a different foreign language. And it's like, what's happening? And it's true for demisexuals as well. The one, they don't experience sexual attraction all the time. And so until they experience that sexual attraction, they're just like an ordinary asexual, if you know what I mean, in the sense they don't experience any sexual attraction. So when the rare time comes along that they do, it's very difficult for them, because it means kind of like they're in no man's land. They're not, they're sexual, but not to the extent that the average sexual person is. Discouraging. Yeah, Heather. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for the demisexuals. And, like I said, I've been doing these videos for years and I've never experienced sexual attraction. But, if I did, I don't think I ever would. But if I did, that would be kind of weird for me. Because it'd be like, well, I've always said I hate sex. I've always said I don't experience sexual attraction. Now what am I meant to do? And I'm just putting myself in the position and mindset of what, if that ever happened. And, it does worry me, in the back of my head. I'm like, what if that did happen? I'm like, but it doesn't. You've tried to force yourself to, and it doesn't, Sandra. So it's not going to happen. I was with that heterosexual guy the year before last, and I was while I was kissing him and being really aroused, I was thinking, because obviously I'm a asexual that gets aroused, I was thinking, oh, do you experience sexual attraction? I was trying in my mind while I was kissing him to like push myself, like, maybe you'll feel it. And it's just like, no, I don't. I really just don't experience sexual attraction. And I just knew. And that was actually a really good thing for me. Not the guy wasn't good for me, but finding out that I'm definitely 100% not experiencing any sexual attraction whatsoever, it was really, really good. Because although I knew I was asexual, I've always known I'm asexual, since I've done these videos, and I've always said I am, and I don't experience sexual attraction. It was just so good to have it confirmed, like, straight on, full on, like that, because it's a type of situation that someone would be in, that if anything was going to happen in terms of sexual attraction, it probably would. And also there was a heterosexual I dated last year. Again, I was really passionately kissing him. I mean, you wouldn't think I was asexual with the way I was kissing him. I know I am, but you know, my behaviour is sexual sometimes in the way I like to kiss. But I never experienced sexual attraction. I wasn't interested in him from the waist down, you know? I mean, he even like said, "Oh, I don't mind if you touch me further down." I'm like, "No, I'm not interested in that. I told you that already, you know?" And I'm not. I'm genuinely not interested from the waist down. The guy could just take that off for all I care. I'm only interested in his face, you know, his hair, his head, his shoulders, his frame, even his chest I get interested in now. And years ago, you know, I wasn't sure in my asexual journey that I liked the guy's chest being naked. I thought for some time, back in 2015, I think it was, I thought that I didn't like a guy's chest naked. But I do if it's just for me. And I don't mind kissing it and sucking the nipples and stuff like that, which I thought, you know, I wouldn't like doing. But it's kind of like, because I've been dating heterosexual guys, like, not much, because in general I don't date them, but last year I did, and the year before. It's kind of like I don't mind doing that, especially if the guy's got no chest hair. If he's got chest hair, I don't like it, which is why I like foreign guys more as well, because there's more foreign guys that don't have chest hair, or I have very little of it. Some of them, not all of them, some of them like a gorilla, but you know, and like I don't like chest hair. So you know, if he's got no chest hair, it's appealing. If he's got chest hair, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to kiss hair. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like asexuality is a journey of discovery, and you know, don't beat yourself up if all of a sudden you do find one day that you're demisexual, because it can happen, you know, and it might be completely unexpected, you know. I mean, with those two people the heterosexuals that I dated, I wouldn't say I got a strong emotional bond with them, neither of them, you know. So obviously, demisexual, you can only get, you know, I was emotionally connected to them. I was emotionally attached to them, but isn't the same as a deep emotional connection bond with them. So if you can be if I explain that you can be emotionally attached to someone, so you can have strong emotional feelings, like when you're a romantic asexual particularly, you can have these strong attachment feelings, you know, that you really feel like you're attached to them. You love them, you don't want to be without them, you've kind of got this need to be with them. So that's kind of emotional attachment. Then emotional bond is like a soulmate thing. It's like when you deeply bond, and it's when you've built up a really good friendship with that person, when you share your secrets with each other, when you really get down on a deep and meaningful level and their mindset, when you kind of know their deepest their deep I can't speak tonight, their deepest fears, when you know their deepest feelings, when you really know deep down that person, you know their heart and their personality, and you know things that no one else knows about them. So that is a really important distinction to make. There's a difference between emotional attachment and emotional bond. You know, an emotional bond is kind of like a soulmate thing, where you know, I have this with some of my friends, you know, that I'm emotionally connected to them, but in more of a soulmate bonded way. And then in the past, I've been with heterosexuals, but I've never experienced a deep emotional bond with them like I have with asexual friends. Because with heterosexuals, a lot of the time, it's kind of like, because of the sexual energy, I feel like it kind of gets in the way of a deep emotional connection with them. It's kind of like, because they're so focused on sex and, you know, and the way sex makes them feel and the way they want sex, you know, it's really hard, I feel, to get past that. Especially, sorry, I'm going to unfold my legs, especially as an asexual person. If you're with a sexual, I find it, you know, it's very different, very difficult. So yeah, that, you know, my friends, you know, when my friends, my asexual friends, for example, when they share with me their deepest secrets and things that, you know, I don't obviously say on this channel, you know, I don't tell everything to, you know, people tell me secrets, I keep them secret. And you know, and they tell me, and I share things with them that's really personal, like go into more detail about personal stuff that I do on this channel, you know. And you know, it gives you a really, really strong, deep emotional bond with them. And I haven't experienced that in romantic relationships in the past, because my romantic relationships have all been, you know, with sexual guys. And I feel that with sexual guys, like I said, the sexual energy kind of gets in the way, and I've never built that really strong, deep friendship that's lasted. I mean, my my last long-term ex, I was friends with him for 8 months, and I thought we were soulmates. I thought I'd built up that strong bond for a while with him because he would share his secrets. And then after we got together in the relationship, it just all went. He was secretive and not nice, and I don't want to go into all that because I want to forget about him. But, you know, it was just completely not good. And so, you know, I think you can be emotionally attached to someone. I think you can be emotionally connected to someone to a certain extent. But getting that deep emotional bond, I think, is very different for some people, you know. It's more of a spiritual thing, I think. It's more of a, you know, like, I guess if you're an aromantic person, you know, you probably experience a lot more emotional bonds. But obviously, it's different to being demisexual. For demisexuals, they do feel sexual attraction when there's a strong emotional bond. But with aromantics, you can be very strongly bonded to all your friends and not experience any attraction, arousal, not experience any feelings of fancying them or crushes, or, you know, this is not true for every aromantic. Obviously, they're grey romantics. A grey romantic is someone that does experience a romantic attraction, but in limited, rare or specific circumstances, or who experiences it but not enough to want to actually act on it. And then you've got the demi-romantics, and they will become fully romantic only when a strong, deep emotional bond has been formed. So this emotional bond thing features quite highly in learning about asexuality and where you fall on the asexual spectrum. But I think it's really important to note that, you know, if your asexuality changes over time and you feel that, you know, you have experienced sexual attraction, it's better to be honest with yourself, even though it might seem weird to you. It's like when I found out I was experiencing high levels of arousal, I could have hidden that fact. I mean, I could have not spoke about it on this channel because it's quite taboo because you're asexual. Do you know what I mean? But I thought, no, I'm going to be absolutely honest here because it's something that I found that I found it strange. I found it really weird. I'm like, how can you experience this high levels of arousal, but you don't experience any sexual attraction? It doesn't make you want to have sex. I don't know how that's possible. Even my own brain finds it hard to get around, but my body and my brain, you know, are completely different things, you know. Just because my body decides to be aroused doesn't mean to say I want sex, because I don't, you know, I don't want it at all. So it's very difficult, I think, when, you know, you do that. That's why some people don't label themselves. They don't like to label themselves because they feel if they label themselves and they change, then people will frown upon them or not like them anymore, or think they're a con artist or they're not true. But I would say, you know, when you first find out about asexuality, please research it properly. You know, find out if you definitely do fit on the spectrum. Then you can, you know, if you feel you identify, then, you know, go out and say, I'm asexual. This is how I identify. If you're still confused, you know, say in your profiles, you know, I'm still confused, I'm still learning. It's best to be honest. What I don't like is when people are coming into the asexual community, they don't understand what asexuality is, and they're just saying, oh, well, I haven't had sex for 6 months, I'm asexual. No, that's celibacy. You've just chosen not to have sex and abstain from it for 6 months. This doesn't make you asexual. You know, you're still experiencing the sexual attraction, you're just not doing anything about it for whatever reason. Do you know what I mean? And even sexuals do, you know, the sexuals that are not just driven by sexual desire, they're driven more by sexual attraction. A lot of those still need a bond to be in a relationship with someone. That's how relationships tend to work. They're bonded in some way. Do you know what I mean? It's just the sexual attraction usually features as part of that bonding process. Whereas asexuals don't need the sexual attraction or sexual activity to bond with the person. That's where a huge difference lies. You know, we bond actually through an emotional connection. That's how asexuals love. Whether it's platonically or whether it's more than that, asexuals tend to love through this bond. So if you're an aromantic asexual who doesn't experience any romantic attraction or sexual attraction, you'll have friends, close friends, because you bond with them. Yeah, but there's no sexual desire there. There's no sexual attraction there. You just bonded to them from an emotional point of view. Because that's how you bond. You bond through an emotional experience. That's how asexuals do it. Whereas people who are sexual, they tend to bond more through sexual attraction. So, for example, some people who go out on dates, they have sex the first date. I don't agree with that personally, but it's up to them what they do, you know? I have kisses on the first date, and some people wouldn't agree with that. They think, what the heck are you doing? Why are you kissing someone on a first date? So, you know, I don't personally agree with having sex on the first date, but that's because I'm not sexual. If I was sexual, it might be different, you know. But I'm not that type of person in my mind. I believe you have to get to know someone before you become really intimate with them. Like, I know, but obviously I do kiss on the first date, and people could argue that's very, very intimate. But I only can do that with foreign guys because I feel really comfortable around them, and only select foreign guys, not the whole lot. Do you know what I mean? That look a certain way. So I just wanted to, you know, give the message out that if you are still learning about asexuality, if you suddenly find that you're demisexual, you know, don't worry about it. It can happen to some asexuals that you do discover you're demisexual, because you come across someone who you do experience sexual attraction to. I know one guy who I've met at a meetup, and he was identifying as a demi-romantic, but when he was talking to me, he said about he has experienced sexual attraction, but he only with this one person. And he said, but it wasn't enough for him to act on it. I said, that mean you're grey asexual then. You know, you experience sexual attraction, but not enough to want to act on it. So, but he's only ever felt that with one person who he's really bonded to and really close to. And so he could turn out to be demisexual in the future. You know, if he finds another woman and then he does act on it, because he said to me that he does want kids in the future by natural means. So, because he was asking me about kids, and I'm like, I don't want kids. I just don't. Because he's younger and foreign, and I was like, nah, I don't want kids. Not to adopt, nothing, diddly squat. So, yeah, so he identifies, since he spoke to me, he identifies as a demi-romantic grey asexual. Now, the thing that's difficult about demi-romantic grey asexual is grey asexuals may want to do more sexual stuff, because they're on the grey asexual spectrum, like sexual touching and stuff, but yet they're not that romantically inclined, because they don't experience, you know, demi-romantic is someone experiences romantic attraction only under rare or limited or specific circumstances, but not enough to want to act on it. So when someone's around that person, that he might be aesthetically attracted to them, he might, you know, want to do some sexual stuff with them, but yet he doesn't actually, you know, have that romantic drive in him. So that can be really, really difficult. Very, very difficult. I mean, some people think that aromantic sexuals, those who don't experience romantic attraction, but they do experience sexual attraction, some people can find those type of people very cold, because they really just want the sex, because that's just their orientation. They don't, you know, they don't experience a romantic drive. They don't want to be romantic. Not interested in romance. They just, you know, desire the sex because they are sexual. And so an aromantic asexual, yeah, it's very different to an aromantic sexual. An aromantic asexual will be someone who doesn't experience romantic attraction or sexual attraction. They'll be quite friendly. You know, they can be quite warm, because they got lots of friends usually, if they find it easy to make friends. You know, some aromantics, they don't find it easy to make friends because they're introverted, so their friends are just online mostly. But, you know, in general, the aromantics are you know, seen as more of a warm person, like more of a neutral relationship type of person, and more of a, you know, like because they don't experience a romantic attraction, but they still need that really good strong platonic relationships and platonic bond. So they're seen as quite, like, I would say, in my experience, aromantics are seen as quite warm, friendly people. That's how I perceive them anyway. Warm, friendly, kind of cute and cuddly sometimes. Because they're quite sweet. I think aromantics are quite sweet. I think they're romantic, some of them, without actually experiencing romantic attraction or being romantic. I think they just naturally are, some of them. But, you know, I find aromantics very warm, a lot of them. And I think they're, like, you know, they kind of like want to be everyone's friend. I think in general, it's kind of like, you know, it's like I'm like the neighbor, you know, like if you're relating it to a superhero character, you know, like the friendly Spider-Man in your neighborhood. I find that aromantic asexuals are like that. They're like your friendly Spider-Man that want to help you out, you know, in times of trouble, and who care about you, are there for you as a friend, and who appreciate you, and just like chatting, and they see everyone as kind of like equal. Whereas aromantic sexual person can be seen as a lot more cold because they don't really need to get close to a person for friendship. They have not really any interest in that. They just want to have sex with the person. Do you see what I mean? This is how I perceive them. But then I don't think all sexuals are like that. I just think they have a stigma attached and a stereotype of that. And I just saw one sexual aromantic person that was like that. But I don't think that's true of all aromantic sexuals, because there was a female aromantic sexual person on my asexualized page. So she's an aromantic sexual person, but she's on my asexualized page, and she is acts very romantically despite being an aromantic. She likes kisses and cuddles and stuff like that. So I think that's not true for all sexual aromantics. I think some of them can be warm, some of them can be nice, and some of them can be romantic even if they don't experience romance. You know, so there's stereotypes really within the asexual community and within the sexual community. But I would just say from my experience, that's how those variations come across. I would say that asexual aromantic is someone who's a lot more seen as a lot more, feels a lot more warm and is seen as a lot more warm. And then there's far more aromantic sexuals that seem more cut off in an emotional sense, you know, because they don't need that to experience the sexual attraction. Whereas asexuals need a bond to be friends with someone, really, you know, like deep friends with someone rather than acquaintance, and to have a QPR, queer platonic relationship, or a romantic relationship, you know. But like I said, all people are different. So, you know, it's best just to figure out who you are and then tell people. But if you are experiencing difficulty in knowing whether you're demisexual or not, you know, just research it and just see if it happens for you. You know, if you do experience a sexual attraction, or if you think you felt it, you know, put demisexual. I mean, I think probably it's easier to go from sometimes demisexual into being asexual, in the sense that, you know, you realise, oh, I haven't experienced any sexual attraction. But I think, you know, if you say you're asexual, then all of a sudden you become demisexual, or you say you're demisexual, I think that's where it's very difficult for you, because it's like, well, you've said you're asexual and now you're demisexual. But, you know, you can't help who you are. If things change, you know. And if you do become demisexual because, you know, you experience sexual attraction once in a blue moon, then so be it. I just don't think it's good for people to come in the asexual community and not research what we are about and not research asexuality properly, you know. I don't think it's good when people come in and they just think it's abstaining and celibacy, when clearly it's not. They're two different things. Celibacy has been around for years, you know, just like asexuality has, but asexuality is not very much talked about, is it? But celibacy is still talked about, you know, in the general public, in the heteronormative society. Celibacy is talked about, abstaining is talked about, especially to do with marriage. So we all kind of know what abstain is and celibacy. So I don't really understand why some of those people are seeking out to put the asexual term on themselves just for a short period of time. I think they're just doing it, I don't know why, because maybe they want to just talk to asexuals for whatever reason. I mean, I know on meetup.com, people are in asexual groups and they're not asexual. Like I said, I keep meeting loads of them. I mean, I talk to the foreign guys. Like, there was a guy, meetup.com, London asexual group. I friended him because he was foreign. He lived in the UK. I like the look of him. And since becoming friends, I asked him where he falls on the asexual spectrum, and basically, is he asexual? And because he said about my where's your can you give me your WhatsApp number? Which I thought, this guy's not going to be asexual if just straight away he's asking for my WhatsApp number. Anyway, I said, well, you can add me on Facebook. He added me on Facebook, and I thought, all right, well, I'll talk to him a little bit. And he just doesn't speak to me. But he's got a lot of mutual friends, so he's got a lot of business friends that I'm connected to. So we're kind of, I think he just thinks, well, I'll keep you as a business person acquaintance on there now. And it's kind of like, you know, it's like, well, why didn't you just say I'm not asexual? Because that's pretty much what you're saying to me. You're not asexual, because if you were, you would have answered my questions. So, you know, it's just like, there's so many sexuals on meetup.com that are in asexual groups. And whenever I talk to them about it, you know, the majority of them are just like, well, it's another group to be in, isn't it? I just joined it because I like meeting people and socialising. It's just like, Do you know what I mean? But it makes it very difficult if you are an asexual person who wants to connect with people of your own kind, who you can relate to, who can relate to you, and you want to talk to people who don't experience sexual attraction, and you're actually looking for a relationship without it. It makes it very, very difficult. And that is why I do personally like labels. There are some people that don't want to label themselves, they don't agree with it, they don't feel comfortable, and, you know, whatever is comfortable for you is okay. However, I would say if you're on asexual dating sites, then it's fair to other people if you do put some sort of label as to who you are, what type of asexual you are, if you're looking for other people to have a relationship with. Because how are they going to understand what you like and what you don't like? I mean, yes, they can talk to you, but they still need, when they're flicking through your profile, to have a general idea. Like, are you attracted to women or guys? Are you attracted to any gender, you know? Do you like kissing at all? Do you not? Do you know what I mean? It's like an aromantic asexual, for example, on an asexual dating site is going to be very different to someone who's a romantic asexual or a demisexual asexual, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? They're just going to have different needs and think differently. So I think it's really important, not just for yourself, really, but, you know, for other people to know. And yes, if you're not interested in having a relationship with anyone else, then I guess it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what type of asexual you are. It only really matters if you want a relationship with someone else, because they need to know. But being demisexual is what you need to know for yourself, you know, because some people, they search for ages and they're like, I'm not sure where I fit in. But, you know, you fit in just as you are, because you're beautiful just being in this world. And no matter what asexual spectrum orientation you are, just remember you're beautiful. And, you know, things do change, and you've done your research and you thought you were one thing and now you find out you're another. Then that is okay. You know, you can be something else. Just don't be one of those people who flips and flies between all different orientations until you've done your research. And don't be one of those people that comes into the asexual community who's not really asexual and just think abstaining for a few months because they're not, you know, they're just not having sex for a few months is. You know, be kind to yourself, be realistic, be honest, but definitely research it. And once you find out you're asexual, if it's something you've never experienced sexual attraction before in your life, you know, then it's a beautiful experience. You know, you find a community of people who are like you, who look up to you, who you look up to them, who you can relate to, who you can have good conversations with, who are on the same mindset level as you. You know, being asexual is beautiful. And when you find out you're asexual or demisexual or grey sexual, you know, when you find out there's people that don't experience sexual attraction, it's okay if you don't. I think that's a beautiful thing, you know. So take your time, get to know yourself, get to know what you like and don't like. Obviously, asexuality is a journey, so you're not going to find it all out straight away. So things might change a little bit. So you might identify as heteromantic, then you might end up being a demi-romantic, or you know, or like I said, you may end up being demisexual. It's okay to change, so long as that you've done it with a considered logic. Do you know what I mean? And be researching the topic. And, you know, and you just like, oh yeah, I've just, you know, like, especially in the first few months or the first few weeks, I think that's when you're most likely to change your orientation as to how you describe yourself, because you've got all these new terms coming at you and you don't really know which one fits you, and you might not kind of fit into any one straight away. And you might, you know, like I said, there's new terms coming out all the time. So you might find a new term coming up that you didn't know of before. I mean, for me, like I said in my Asexual Perspectives book, I redefined the term grey A to be separate to grey asexual and grey sexual, in the sense that grey A meaning grey areas, because I experience high arousal levels, but I don't experience any sexual attraction. For me, the kissing is sexual in behaviour. So for me, that's a grey area. And there isn't actually a specific term closer than grey A to the type of kissing and arousal I feel, other than heteromantic, being just heteromantic. You know, I'm heteromantic, and most people that experience high arousal levels are heteromantic. They just call themselves a heteromantic. But I don't think that's quite right, in the sense that there's so many different heteromantics. There's tons of them that don't want any physical contact much. They wouldn't be happy with tongue kissing. They might be happy with pecks at a push. Do you know what I mean? So I just think it's easier sometimes if I say a grey A, asexual person, a heteromantic grey A, even though I'm not a textbook grey A, just because the, you know, people need to understand sometimes I've got grey area of kissing. It's very difficult when you're kind of like in a grey area but you're not. So I'm not actually a grey asexual, but I'm in a grey area with the way I like to kiss and my behaviour sometimes. It just makes me in a grey area automatically, because it's like most people aren't one or the other. Yeah, you know what I mean? That like most people are one or the other, or in my case, aren't one or the other. You know, that's what makes me a grey A. But I'm not a textbook grey A to all intents and purposes. Why Wikipedia? I'm not the current definition. But the definition of grey A used to be a catch-all term for someone who didn't quite fit into the asexual, being completely asexual, being completely sexual, somewhere in between. But I'm definitely not sexual, so I'm a heteromantic. I tend to use heteromantic and don't say grey A as much, but I just say it's grey area, because I'm not really a grey asexual as in textbook terms. And don't forget, demisexual comes under the grey asexual spectrum. Anyway, I'm going to conclude tonight's video. If you are demisexual and watching this video, please comment in the below. I hope to hear from you. If you're discovering about asexuality, go to asexuality.org. They've got some good resources there. Look at Aven Wiki, AVEN Wiki. That's like a Wikipedia for the Asexuality Visibility Education Network, which is asexuality.org. They've got some good definitions of the different terms of asexuality. Not all of them, but they've got some of them. And, you know, just research around a bit. I mean, I've got my blog, asexualist.com. I do all these videos, so you can look back. And I've got quite a few different definitions of heteromantic, hyperromantic I talk about. You know, thank you, Heather. Thanks so much. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. It really helps with the getting the eyeballs on this channel. It helps grow the channel. It helps us get the awareness of asexuality out there. It really does. And if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the great big subscribe button. I really appreciate that. And hit the bell icon so that you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. And like I said, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I know you missed half the live stream. You can catch up with it, I'm sure. And thank you, Heather, so much. Really appreciate it. And take care. Look forward to